What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host, and I am here to help you preview Monday Night Football between the Chiefs and the Ravens. Of course, you can check out our Week 3 recap feed, Week 3 recap podcast in the podcast feed, where myself, John Breach, and Ryan Wilson go over every single game. And I apologize to Bears fans. Just kidding. Chiefs at Ravens. Joining me now to discuss it, RJ White. The man, the myth, the legend. You look like you. How you feeling?
Good. It wasn't a great week 3. You know, we had a lot of coin flip games that could have went either way. I felt good about Atlanta up until 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I felt good about the Rams up until they got a questionable pass interference on fourth down, and it just seemed like
Pete Briscoe and I were arguing. He's like, you got lucky with the. Under in Tampa Bay and Denver. I was like, okay, well, you got lucky with Buffalo, and I got unlucky with LA. He's like, what do you mean? They shouldn't have even been in that game. It's like, well, what are you're just going to cherry pick the first half? Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. Like, it's just, there's always little things you can pick through every game, about this could have went that way. But that was clear, fourth down, game's over if they don't throw that flag. Yeah. And a very questionable flag there.
Yeah. That play, the 2-point conversion in Seattle, Dallas, and there was one more play of the day.
I should have had the under on the San Francisco game. It was a complete under game, and then garbage time they score a touchdown instead of a field goal that pushes it over at the end because Giants absolutely quit on that game.
Yep. All right. Anyway, let's talk about the game tonight. Sammy Watkins, Javarius Ward, and are both questionable, and for the Chiefs, Alex Okafor out, and then, of course, Taven Young for the Ravens out as well. The Ravens are -3.5. The over-under is 54. The Chiefs on the money line are +155, and the Ravens on the money line are -175. What is your initial reaction to this line, RJ? Because for me, I see it and think, oh, my God, Patrick Mahomes is free money, and I'm like, wait a minute, am I being tricked?
Yeah, that's what you would figure. It's been 3.5 most of the week, and as of Monday morning, it came down to 3. So it's not surprising that people will be taking, the Chiefs at 3.5, and you could see it go back up to 3.5 because you figure we talked to Kenny, and Kenny loved the Ravens. He figures the Ravens are a much better team than the Chiefs. I don't really see that. I'm happy to take the points with either of these quarterbacks right now. Mahomes is 5-0-1 against the spread as an underdog in his career, and I will admit, Baltimore has been playing the better of the two so far. But I mean, I think a lot of that is the Chiefs having to play the Chargers last week, a Chargers defense that knows them really well and knows how to defend them really well. And they did a good job. The Chargers did. They did about as well as you could have hoped, and they still lost the game. So it's got to tell you something about that. The Chiefs had success in the run game the last time these two met in 2019 against the Ravens, and they've upgraded at running back. That game was Darrell Williams and LaShawn McCoy, splitting 120 yards of rushing, whatever. This time it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I'm not going to shoot holes in the Ravens. I don't have anything to say that they're a bad team. They're obviously a great team. It is just playing the number for me. If you can get 3.5, take Chiefs 3.5. It's too many points.
Okay, just some notes here. Baltimore has covered in 6 straight games, a covering machine, and they've covered 11 of their last 12 regular season games. The only game they didn't cover was the 3-point win against the 49ers in that crazy rain game where they were 5.5-point favorites. During that 12-game stretch, according to CBS Sports Research, or Devo, they have a plus 21.1 point per game differential. That is crazy. They're covering by an average of 16 points per game. Lamar Jackson, 4-0 straight up and against the spread as a starter in prime time. This is the third career matchup between Lamar and Pat Mahomes. KC is 2-0 straight up in both of those. They covered in 2019, but did not cover in 2018 as 6.5-point favorites. And Patrick Mahomes has only been a dog 6 times in his career as a starter, dating back to when he was a dog against the Broncos in that final Week 17 game. He is 5-0-1 against the spread and 4-2 straight up when he is an underdog. The push there at Monday night game, 54-51, when they lost to the Rams in the Star Wars game that was supposed to revolutionize football and then somehow derailed the Rams for a year and a half. Whew. I mean, that's sort of my thing is how do you stare down? And by the way, KC has won 13 consecutive games in September straight up. I just don't know how you stare down Mahomes as a dog. That's the problem. I know people love the Ravens. I think the Ravens are probably the better team across the board right now, but Mahomes as a dog is crazy.
Yeah, the problem is you find a trend that favors Baltimore in this spot. You can go find a trend that favors Kansas City. It's just these two teams play so well. So, of course, the Chiefs have won all these games in September. Of course, the Ravens have a winning streak dating back there. So you can't really rely on any of that. You mentioned the Mahomes thing. 4-2 straight up. That Rams was the push. They lost there, but the other loss was also the straight up losses when they were against the Pats. They were +4 and they covered, but they lost in 2018. So when they play these really, really good teams, top level elite teams, they can lose but still cover, and maybe one of these times they get blown out, but I just don't see it. We also talked about on Friday how my teaser of the week involved teasing the Rams and the Chiefs, and we were like, how does that miss? And I said, well, the Rams could get blown out. You just don't know if they're not ready for that, and they almost did. But they came back and covered the teaser leg of that. And then our other, comment on that was, I don't see how the Chiefs lose by double digits. So if you teased it and you still have the Chiefs active, good luck to you, because I don't see how they don't keep this game close and probably cover.
Yeah, it is difficult to imagine. I'm sort of kind of leaning towards taking the Ravens though. I don't know.
I think you're doing what you think the books opposite of what the books want you to do. You think the books obviously want us to take the Chiefs here, so it just seems like you got to take the Ravens.
Is that what I'm doing?
I think that's what you're doing. You tell me.
That might be what I'm doing. It is hard to imagine the Ravens blowing out the Chiefs. It's just hard to imagine. Like, what happens if the Ravens are up 21 points? Are the Chiefs just going to give up and not come back? I mean, Mahomes is going to keep slinging it. What about the total? What about the total in this game? 54.
That was the next point I was going to make. And even if Baltimore is up 21-0, they're not going to sit on that lead because they got Mahomes on the other sideline. So these two offenses know they got to stay aggressive all game against each other. There's no slowing down in the second half. I don't care what your lead is because you've seen what these teams can do. So these two combined for 955 yards of offense and 61 points last year. I think we'll see something similar in this game. So yeah, over 54 has got to be the play for me.
Okay, so that's really what you should. Maybe that's the play here. If you want to, like, I think so let's say you're in a picks pool and you're trying to win the week or whatever, or you got to put a pick in. If you got the 3.5, you probably want to lean towards the Chiefs because I think that hook is a big deal and it could end up coming down and being a 3-point game. If you've got, if you got to pick straight up, no problem taking the Ravens. If you want to bet on this game, maybe don't bet on the spread. Maybe hit the over at 54, and then live bet the dog. Or take, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that you can this feels like a game where there could be a point where the Chiefs are up 10 and a point where the Ravens are up 10. And when that happens, you're going to get Baltimore plus 200 or Kansas City plus 200, whoever's losing. And at that point, you can potentially lock in profit, no matter who wins, if you take the dog live. Now that's a lot of work. It's not, put the bet in and sit back and watch the game and drink beer. I mean, it's a little bit more difficult than that, but it's just a thought process there.
Yeah, I wonder if, I think a lot of these live odds are tied to automatic stuff. This is what happens in this situation. But you got to wonder if you're the books, if you take control of that yourself with these two teams, you say maybe we're not going to give out as big a plus number as we normally would because, 10 points to the Chiefs is a lot different than if the Dolphins are down 10 or the Jaguars are down 10,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be I don't think the Chiefs down 10 will automatically be plus 200. But, I mean, if the Chiefs are plus 155 on the money line to start the game and they're down 2 scores, they're going to be plus 1. I mean, they're going to be something close to 200.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll look at player props and DFS options. All right. So thanks to our friends at William Hill, we can dive on in on some player props. RJ, how are you going to find an under? What's the under you're eyeing for this particular game? Because this is not a spot where you so if I was saying on Cowboys Seahawks, you could have taken the over on basically any receiver's prop and it hit, with the exception of maybe Chris Carson.
Yeah, more than likely. I think the under you take here is you go to Mark Ingram and you take under 12.5 rush attempts. Ingram has had no more than 10 attempts in each of his first 2 games. He had 10 in one and 9 in the other. The Ravens have shown they're going to lean on several different running backs in the rotation. Gus Edwards led the backfield last week. And so I think that continues. You can't really tell how much work Ingram is going to get because he's not a true number one running back. Also, I also expect more passing from Lamar. I think that they're going to zig where the Chiefs might be expecting them to zag, and Lamar throws it a little more because that's probably not what the Chiefs are expecting, and that could limit the rush attempts even further if the Ravens are attacking downfield with the pass. So Mark Ingram under 12.5 rush attempts seems like the safest thing to me. I think he probably gets somewhere in the realm of 8 to 10, maybe 12 max.
Patrick Mahomes. I like this one. Patrick Mahomes total rushing yards, 19.5.
Yeah, we could see it. We see these big games. He runs a lot more, especially in the playoffs. We saw those couple 50-yard things. So they could unleash him a little more in that. I was a little hesitant to go with that because it just doesn't happen as often as we think. He sometimes get to like 16 or 17. He doesn't quite get to 20. But it's funny. Either he goes like just under or way over because they'll have these 50-yard rushing games right. And he'll have these 15-yard rushing games.
Yeah, it'll either be like 19 on the number or like 78.
Right.
I just don't have a problem taking – I don't know if I would take the over. So Mahomes passing touchdowns, the over 1.5 is minus 170. That's a lot of juice to lay for 2 passing touchdowns. Although I will say that typically speaking with the Chiefs, they're willing to use those jet sweeps and those little flicks at the goal line, which do count as passing touchdowns. I think you can probably take some deep shots against this Ravens secondary, which is good, but not necessarily. And nobody's an elite defense right now, and these offenses can just get deep on people. I don't know that I don't know I want to mess around with the Mahomes over under at 292.5. But I would be a little interested in taking both Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce over receiving yards 67.5.
Yeah. You wonder if you take them both, if one's going to cannibalize the other. So maybe like you get 100 from Tyreek and 50 from Kelce or flip flop. So that would be my worry about taking both. I think you kind of have to take a position with one of those.
Okay. What about Lamar Jackson? Over under passing touchdowns 1.5 minus 150. Wow. His over under passing yards is 249.5. That seems a little low for me.
Yeah, that's actually one I picked to highlight, when we talked, is that he's grown as a passer since that last meeting last year because they met, I think, week 3, week 4, somewhere around there. And he still had 267 passing yards in that game. The Chiefs made him throw 43 times in that game and held him to just 8 carries. The thing was, don't let him get outside. Don't let him run. Just give up the runs to the running backs and make him beat us with the pass. And he had a good, solid game passing. I think he's grown as a passer, and he could have even more here. So if KC tries to take away the run again, I think Jackson's going to have a big day passing. He can get to 300 yards.
How about any of the receivers? So in that same vein, do any of the receivers' numbers strike you as actionable plays?
My favorite's probably Mark Andrews. I think he could get open in the middle of that Chiefs defense. We saw them give up, I think 6 catches and 80-something yards to Hunter Henry last week. We saw them give up a touchdown to Jordan Akins in week 1. So I think that there is something to exploit there. If Baltimore is looking into the tape, they could say, we need to feature Andrews a little more in this game. And Andrews is just hard to stop overall. I don't care who you are defensively.
Okay. Looking at players to score a touchdown. Andrews plus 145 for a touchdown.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. The only concern would be if they plop Honey Badger on him and just try to lock him down.
Yeah, but they're not. At some point, there's just too many weapons to stop. You got to stop him, but then you got to stop Lamar running the ball, and you got to stop all these running backs. So yeah, I do expect to see some Honey Badger on Adams, but I don't think or on Andrews, but I don't think it's something where you say that's your guy all game. You just take him.
Does anybody pop out to you for first touchdown scored? I kind of want to take Miles Boykin at 22-1.
Yeah, you could try a long shot there. Nothing really strikes it to me. I would think it'd be something like Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Andrews. So maybe you take a flyer on one of those. The one random prop I like is Harrison Butker over 2.5 extra points made at minus 105. It's juice to the under for some reason, but the Chiefs team total is 25.5 points, 26 points, somewhere around there. You got to figure they're scoring 3 touchdowns. And Butker's one of the best kickers in the game. He's made 94% of his extra points in his career, 90% of his field goals. You don't expect him to miss in any single game. He misses a couple a year, but you can't pick the game where he misses. So I think the Chiefs get 3 touchdowns. He gets 3 extra points, and we cash this pretty easily.
That's a great one. Good call. If you're betting at William Hill, go hit that thing, man. Okay. What about DFS? Any other props, by the way, before we?
So one lottery ticket prop, 50-1 on this. It's in the specials category. It's 3 legs. Chiefs got to win. And they're the underdog, but they're not a huge underdog. Clyde Edwards-Helaire over 99.5 rushing yards, so he has to get to 100 yards rushing. Hollywood Brown over 99.5 receiving yards, got to get 100 yards receiving. So Casey obviously has a great shot to win. They're probably the easiest of those three to hit.
That's actually been bumped down to 33 to 1.
Well, everybody's probably bet it since I wrote it and it went up on the site this morning.
That's what I'm suggesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, not as great value here, but I think the Chiefs lean on Edwards-Helaire more to keep Lamar off the field. I think both these teams offensively do what you don't expect them to do. Chiefs running the ball more, Ravens passing the ball more. And if that's the case, I think KC, is going to give it to Edwards-Helaire more. We saw he had 25 carries in week 1 and 100 and I think 20 something rushing yards. He could get something like that in this game, get over 100. Brown already has one 100-yard game. He had it in week 1. And if, Baltimore has to pass more to keep up with the Chiefs, he has a better chance going over 100. So KC gave up 112 yards on 8 catches to Will Fuller in week 1. This could be a similar matchup problem for them in Brown. So I think these are reasonable. In fact, you put them all together, it shouldn't be 50 to 1 or 33 to 1 it is now. I think there's a decent chance it hits.
All right. So that's interesting too, because you mentioned, for that to hit, you need a certain game script, right? The Chiefs have to be trying to pound the ball, maybe have a lead, running aggressively, and the Ravens trying to come from behind and throwing it deep to Marquise Brown. Now you could hit it either, it doesn't have to happen that way, but that seems like the likely outcome. And when we look at DFS, we need to figure out what is our game script for these showdowns, because you need to determine who is going to excel, in a given game. For instance, the Saints Packers game, if you thought the Saints might be winning and you had Latavius Murray in your lineup, you didn't do very well. But if you thought Aaron Rodgers was going to sling the ball around and Alan Lazard was going to go nuts and Alvin Kamara was going to catch 400 passes, then you did very well. What would be your approach here with this? And again, one of the other things too is that sometimes you have to differentiate your lineups. If you want to truly try and be unique, we could see a situation where, there's a chop pot at the end and, everybody had the same lineup, but you don't just want to be like, all right, well, here's what the norm is. I'll go with that. What would be your approach with the DFS setup, RG?
Yeah, it also depends on what you're playing. Are you playing the GPPs going for a big payout? Or are you playing like the 50-50s or just trying to get over the line? So in the latter, I think you have to go with one of the quarterbacks. I take Mahomes as the cheaper option, even though that lottery ticket prop kind of goes the other way. If you have kind of both in your pocket, then you have two, wildly different game scripts. So maybe that helps out here. It should be a high scoring game. Quarterbacks are probably going to each score multiple times. So I just take the high floor and cash setups and go with Mahomes there.
Okay. What about in a GPP? Who would be the player you would try and differentiate yourself with? Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Marquise Brown? What do you think?
Yeah, my two options for a GPP is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like you said, and Mark Andrews. Andrews seems like a good bet. Chiefs gave up 83 yards and 6 catches to Hunter Henry. Like I said, if the linebackers and safeties are more focused on stopping Lamar again and making sure he doesn't get 11 to 15 carries, that'll open things up for the tight end over the middle. Andrews had just 3 catches for 15 yards in the 2019 game, so he didn't have a good game early last year. But the 2 other tight ends in that game had 6 catches for 72 yards also. So you add it all up, and there is potential there for the tight ends to go off. Baltimore could focus on slowing Mahomes and just make Clyde Edwards-Helaire beat him, have another one of those like 25 carry, 120-yard games, a couple touchdowns, like I said. And the Chiefs, obviously his when they drafted him, it was a lot of his passing abilities. They could throw it to him a lot. You can get a lot of PPR points there. So Baltimore gave up 124 rushing yards on 20 carries to all the Kansas City running backs last year. If we get something similar this year, that's going to mostly go to Edwards-Helaire. So you're probably talking 100 to 110 rushing yards, and then whatever he gets receiving.
So do you think it's a viable, obviously, so with the showdown, we're talking about DraftKings, your captain gets 1.5 points. Do you think it is a viable strategy to roll with somebody other than one of these quarterbacks at captain?
I think it's tough, especially since we're expecting so many points. I think when you have a game where you expect one of the quarterbacks to do poorly, like what actually happened in Thursday's game where Jacksonville didn't do much, then you can think about zigging a little bit and going with the running back on the winning team or that kind of thing. But especially if you're just trying to get over the line in cash, I think don't try to be a hero. If you're playing for $1 or $2, $3, whatever, and you want to go crazy, go crazy. It's not going to impact you that much. But if you just want to consistently cash week in and week out, you got to go with a quarterback.
So yeah, but we're talking about winning a GPP. We're not here.
Mark Andrews then.
So I'm just sort of thinking through. You think Mark Andrews is the play?
Yeah, I think I just think it's going to be so tough to stop Lamar that he's going to be open a lot. So I think he's probably the one that, being a tight end, people might not see as much upside, but as we know, he's one of the better tight ends in the game. He's a lot cheaper than Kelsey. Kelsey's 15,000 on the captain, prices, and Andrews is 12,000. So
Yeah.
I think sneakily he could have a better game than Kelsey and deliver a little bit more. So I think he'll probably be one of the lesser owned captains that could come through.
So I actually like this game because this matchup. So for instance, on Sunday night, Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams were both out. And we knew that going into the game. We knew that Devontae Adams was probably going to be missing. We knew Thomas was definitely out. And what that did was created a lack of leverage. But like when you don't have Thomas and you don't have Adams, everybody's sort of basically, you're operating from a smaller pool. And so there's not going to be as much differentiation. Whereas now, if you could easily last night on Sunday night, you could easily get Drew Brees. You could easily get, you could get everybody into your lineup. It just wasn't hard, with Kamara, even with Kamara as captain, as the top guy on the slate. Now you're in a situation where if you go Lamar at captain at 19.5, and then you want to have Mahomes in there as well at 12, you can add Mark Andrews and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and all of a sudden you have 1350 to work with for each of the final two spots, which is we're not talking. I mean, like at that point you're working with Byron Pringle, Darwin Thompson, Nick Boyle, Devin DuVernay, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I kind of like it in the sense that you basically have to pick. You kind of have to pick one of the quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, if you want to get those names that everybody knows in there, but yeah, if you just want to try to go crazy and try to hit some Miles Boykins and some lower names, maybe you can make it work. So yeah, if Sammy Watkins is out, you talked about at the top, Sammy Watkins is questionable, so maybe that opens things up for the Chiefs receivers. You go a little DeMarcus Robinson, type of lineup there. So that makes it a little bit easier to hit. But yeah, it is really tough to get both the quarterbacks in this matchup just because they're both so good. So they're going to be high priced if you want to get one as a captain. Now, if you do a Mark Andrews lineup, it's a lot easier to get both quarterbacks in because you're not spending up for that captain.
Well, and that was what I was going to say is if you go Andrews as captain, right? He's 12,000 as captain. All of a sudden you can get Lamar, you can get Mahomes, you can get Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then you can have, 4,400 to work with for the final two spots. So you could go Miles Boykin and then come back and get Gus Edwards or something like that. So if you think, and I mean, that's just a random stack. That's not a correlation. If you were going to do a correlated game stack, would you be more likely to go with Ravens runners, or would you go with your angle that you took before with Edwards-Helaire and then have the Ravens coming back over the top?
Yeah, I think I go Edwards-Helaire and then Ravens passers. But if we're just looking to get over the line in cash, I do like going with Gus Edwards down at 1,600. Any Ravens back could lead the team in carries. That was Edwards last week. He had 10 carries for 73 yards. I think that upside makes him a bargain at just 1,600, especially if he ends up getting a look in the red zone. I know that they like to use J.K. Dobbins there near the goal line, but we could see that. And then Mecole Hardman at 4,600. I mean, he saw his role expand when Sammy Watkins got hurt last week. He played a lot more snaps. So if Sammy's rolled out, Hardman I think is a must play at 4,600, and he might even be a must play close to it with the risk of re-injury for Sammy, because just because Sammy's active going into the game doesn't mean that he plays more than a handful of snaps and then has to sit. So if you get Edwards and Hardman in there as flex spots, you can max out and get Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Andrews, and Kelsey, and put Mahomes at captain, and you've got a lot of good coverage there. Okay,
so then your two guys down low would be Gus Edwards and Mecole Hardman that you're targeting.
Right.
Anybody else stand out as a value? I kind of Miles Boykin is 3,400, but I kind of like him.
Yeah, he's solid. He's just, he's gotten some decent amount of looks and targets. I think he had 5 targets last week, and that was a game where they were leading heavily. So if there's a game they have to pass a lot more, and you're going to see a lot more attempts from Lamar, then maybe he gets a little more work mixed in there. So he'd be good. DeMarcus Robinson, if Sammy's out, is pretty solid. I kind of wanted to like some of the deeper guys, the $200 guys, but I just stayed away from it. Like Justice Hill, it looks like is healthy finally. So if he gets active, then maybe we work him in. So say that they put him in instead of Gus Edwards and they roll with him as their third running back. You just don't know what that rotation, what's going to happen. So I think at that point you just throw his $200 in there and then build your lineup from there.
All right, so here's a little lineup for you. Patrick Mahomes at captain, Andrews, Boykin, and Lamar Jackson, plus Mecole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson.
It sounds good. A lot of high upside there. Now, got to hope for a high scoring game.
Well, I'd also have to hope for no Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce.
Right. Yeah, but who's going to throw to those guys?
Right. Why would you even want to look at this, guys? If your non-quarterback captain, would Edwards-Helaire be your guy or Andrews? One of those two guys?
Yeah, one of those two guys. My lean would be to Edwards-Helaire. I think the Ravens are going to be focused a lot on slowing down Mahomes in the passing game. I think it's what you have to do, and it's just going to be ripe for Edwards-Helaire to get a lot of points.
All right. That's the DFS look, the prop shop, and Monday night preview. Thanks, RJ. Talk to you later, buddy.